Hello everyone. Thank you for coming today. I'm Olivia Rowe and I'm a project leader at Mott MacDonald Bentley. So I'm here today to talk about our project at Dearne Reach at Clayton West Sewage Treatment Works. And I've been working on this project since December 2023, so just over 1 year now. Mott MacDonald Bentley have led the detailed design and build of this project on behalf of Yorkshire Water. So hopefully today I'll be able to provide an overview of the project, introduce some of the key design elements and some of the exciting wins that we've been achieving on site as well. So, quick agenda. We're going to just start with a small introduction to treatment wetlands, just for those on the call who might not be overly familiar with these technologies or have much experience working in the nature-based solutions sphere. But don't worry, I'm not going to dwell too long on the theory before we dive straight into the project at Clayton West. There's a growing number of wetland projects, particularly in the Yorkshire region at the moment, which is a very exciting point for nature-based solutions to be at as we head into AMP8. So for this presentation, I really want to focus on sharing our specific project with you. I'll focus on the project itself, the design challenges, some of the modifications and solutions we've achieved. We are already on site, so we were granted planning permission in September of last year. So we already have some exciting developments on site that we can share. And then hopefully we'll have plenty of time at the end to open up into a Q&A session. I will just note at the start that obviously I've been on the project since detailed design and build. So if there's anybody who'd like any further information into the project back from concept stage or into the process, do let me know after the event. My email should be shared and I'll pass you across to the right contact at Yorkshire Water who'll be able to answer those questions for you as well. So on to the presentation. So why nature-based solutions to start with? So for those of you who might be completely new to nature-based solutions, and hopefully that's not many, these are solutions that either use natural processes or closely mimic natural processes to solve a problem. So they're sustainable strategies that help address environmental, social and economic challenges. So for Yorkshire Water specifically, they have two target areas that they focus their nature-based solution investment into. They either fall under the category of catchment solutions. So we're talking natural flood management, river restoration, agricultural land management practices, or you have nature-based assets, and that's where we fall in at Dearne Reach as a wetland for wastewater treatment. So all nature-based solutions harness the power of ecosystems to improve water management, reduce climate risks, enhance biodiversity, and they also provide a valuable social resource too. The whole aim is to work with nature rather than against it. I think if we can successfully utilise these solutions alongside traditional treatment technologies, then hopefully we can harness those multiple benefits in a cost-effective manner that's more sensitive to restoring and protecting our environment. So they are being increasingly integrated into our infrastructure development across the board, particularly across the water industry as well. And hopefully this will only increase as we head into AMP8. So wetlands for water treatment, a quick definition there again for those unfamiliar. Also sometimes known as constructed wetlands. They're basically engineered ecosystems that are designed to use natural processes to treat wastewater, stormwater, sometimes industrial effluents as well. They mimic natural wetlands by using porous media beds and emergent plants to facilitate the removal of contaminants, and this is through physical, chemical and biological processes. So we do have different types of treatment wetlands. So we have floating wetlands that some of you might have seen in the past. We have the subsurface flow reed bed wetlands, so I'm thinking like horizontal, vertical flow reed beds. But the wetland type we're going to focus on today is the free water surface, or you might have heard them called integrated constructed wetlands. And so this is where water flows above the soil through the aquatic plants, and they're effective at removing suspended solids, nutrients, pathogens. They're mostly passive systems, and I'd say they're the wetland types which most closely mimic those of natural systems. And they remove pollutants through a range of processes that occur in natural wetlands. So you've got adsorption, precipitation, sedimentation, filtration as well. So what are the benefits of using these technologies? So obviously the key one is water quality improvements. That's why we're here today. And they do remove contaminants, including nutrients. The data shows it can remove heavy metals, pathogens, organic pollutants. But they are also really good sequesters of carbon, both in the plant biomass and in the soil. They obviously enhance biodiversity as well, and they provide habitat for birds and other wildlife and support that wider ecological balance. They also provide a social resource as well. So, of course, the obvious ones, enhancing landscapes, providing green space, aesthetic benefits for communities. But they also reduce pollutants entering our watercourses, which are obviously a national asset, and they provide future opportunities for research as well. They're versatile technologies. We'll come on to this later in the presentation, but they do cope really well with changes in loads and flow and can be used to treat various types of wastewater as well. They're primarily passive systems, so you've got a lower cost of operation and maintenance compared to your traditional treatment plants such as ferric dosing. And the hope is that these will be able to operate for decades to come with minimal maintenance requirements. So that was just an introduction to treatment wetlands and nature-based solutions. And so we'll move on now to our project at Dearne Reach. So just start with a little bit of geography to situate everyone. We are based just outside of Huddersfield in Denbigh, and our site is just outside the village of Clayton West. And Yorkshire Water is investing in a total of 18.9 million to improve water quality in the River Dearne. So as part of this package of works, we're installing an integrated constructed wetland on the River Dearne to reduce levels of unionised ammonia in the watercourse. And this is in line with the Salmonid Fundamental Intermittent Standards. Just struggle to say that one. So the project's main objective is to achieve compliance of this driver to reduce that ammonia and improve the river water quality of the Dearne by treating storm discharges. So this is an existing works, as you can see in the bottom right of the image. You've got the existing sewage treatment works there. And then we're extending the works to encompass the entirety of the field to the north. So as you can hopefully see on the overlay, the wetland consists of 13 cells in total, got 2 parallel streams. And for context, this wetland area is 4.3 hectares of planted area, which I'm told is 7 football pitches. So we are talking quite a large site here. To support this work, we're constructing a new pumping station to take the flows to the wetland. We've got a new outfall to the River Dearne, a new flow monitoring chamber there, which is powered by solar energy. And the wetland will overall provide additional treatment for storm overflows, and then the flows will then return to the same river reach as they were doing previously. So let's look at the overall site layout in a little bit more detail. Apologies for the small text there. It's very, very difficult to get our site layout on a readable screen, but I'll talk you through it. So we've designed a new wetland pumping station, which is suitable to lift up to 350 litres per second of flows to the wetland. So this is inclusive of gravity pipe work and chambers to intercept and convey those flows. We have a new rising main that links the pumping station with the wetland, and this is crossed underneath the River Dearne using HDD trenchless methods. So hopefully you might be able to see my cursor on screen and talk you through it. Essentially, the water will come underneath through the rising main, and then it'll be pumped to the top of the wetland, right to the head of the works, where we have a distribution chamber in cell 1 to ensure an equal distribution of the flows. And then the water will flow via gravity through all the cells in the sequence. So through cells 1, 2, 3, and 4. There'll then be interconnecting pipe work, which will bring the water around the bend. And then again, the water will flow via gravity through cells 5, 6, and then the final cell 7 before being discharged into the River Dearne through the new outfall structure. The wetlands will be planted and landscaped with specific plants and flora for efficient water treatment. The planting schedule has actually been designed by our colleagues in Canada, so this is a true global effort. And the new outfall is inclusive of solar-powered flow monitoring equipment. And then we've also got the access track, which you can see is on the northern, southern and central spine of the wetland for future maintenance. So that's the design. I thought we'd cover a few of the optimizations that we've made already. So one of the first things that we had a look at was how to manage the high groundwater level on site. So I think this is a challenge that's faced by a lot of wetlands, as they are often near rivers where the groundwater level is traditionally higher. So at first we were really struggling with the high groundwater levels on site and making sure that that flotation worked in the cells. So what we proposed was reducing the fall between the consecutive cells. So originally that was proposed to be 500 mil between each of the cells in the sequence, and we actually reduced that to 350 mil. And that then allowed the cells, particularly in the southern band of cells at the bottom, to be raised higher, and that lifted us away from that groundwater level, and so considerably reduced that groundwater risk on site. By doing this, we also optimised our cut-fill balance on site. So that meant that all the material could be reused. We didn't need to import any material for the embankments of the topsoil, and we don't need to dispose of any excess material either, which is obviously a great win for a nature-based solution. We also originally had a bypass network designed into the scheme, and that was stipulated in our original design guidance. And this bypass would mean that individual cells could be taken offline for future maintenance, and you didn't have to shut down the whole wetland whilst you were doing that. But we had extensive discussions regarding the future maintenance of the wetland plants, and we confirmed that the desilting and replanting can actually be carried out in water depths of up to 1200 mil. Therefore, you could do the maintenance whilst the cell's live, and the isolation of those individual cells wouldn't be required. That meant that we could then remove that significant bypass pipework and take it out of the design altogether. And this led to considerable carbon savings and also overall reduce the project cost, which is a great win. A couple more. So we did have a challenge on the access road requirements. So yeah, challenged by the client as to whether these were a necessary item of scope. After discussing with the operative teams, we did agree from a health and safety point of view that the access roads would bring benefits for future maintenance. We're really a large site, we don't have permanent lighting, and there's also a risk that, maintenance in winter and we're close to the river could be waterlogged. But we did reach a compromise, and that's the use of a road cement technology. I've got some pictures later on in the slide pack of this. But this is a soil stabilisation technique. So you basically reuse the existing soil on site, secret recipe, and it turns it into a concrete-like finish. And then that reduced the requirement to import concrete or tarmac or stone that you traditionally use for the roads. And we could just reuse the existing soil on site to make suitable roads. So it's a health and safety win, and also cost savings as well. And then one of the last optimizations I've pulled out is our rising main. So our original proposal was to install 2 rising main crossings underneath the river, and we actually optimized this that we only needed 1. We did this by providing additional cover on the pipework with 2 manholes, which can then be used to clear any blockages using a pigging system in the future. So we didn't need that secondary pipework, which is again a nice saving. So next slide. I've pulled out a few of the design elements. Obviously, we've only got an hour today, so had to just pull out the ones that I thought would be most interesting to discuss. So yeah, I thought I'd touch on the liner. So initially, we were hoping we wouldn't have to line at the site at all. But after we tested the soil, unfortunately, the existing soils on site just didn't have that suitable permeability and the clay content really for us to sufficiently protect that underlying groundwater and prevent any seepage out of the wetlands in the future. So that obviously brought us to a bit of a problem. As a nature-based solution of this scale, we really wanted to avoid importing large swathes of plastic liner to site. It just didn't sit right with us from a carbon and environmental perspective. We're also concerned that if there was damage to the liner in the future and then that needed to be repaired or replaced, we're just adding to the carbon cost of the project. So we looked into an alternative as a geosynthetic clay liner, or a GCL liner, to form our impermeable barrier. So this is a reinforced composite structure, and it's impregnated with bentonite powder, and it basically forms a shear-resistant hydraulic barrier. One of the key benefits to this technology is it's self-sealing and also rehealing once installed. So if there was any future damage to the wetland, as long as there's a little bit of moisture, it will just heal itself back together and wouldn't need to be replaced, which is obviously a big win for the future maintenance. We installed this by using anchor trenches. So around the perimeters of our slopes on the cells, we've installed anchor trenches to keep this in place to avoid any additional fixings and fixtures being required as well. So with the 13 cells, we've also designed cascade structures to separate each cell in the sequence. I haven't seen this done before. I think this is quite unique to our site. So these structures are 1.4 metres long and are precast concrete components. We'll be installing a GRP decking, 1 metre wide walkway with post and rail fencing for future pedestrian access across the cascades. And then a precast weir block will be retrospectively added to the cascades a year after the plants have established to raise that water level in the cells. So alongside allowing water to pass in between each cell, the cascade structures are actually important to introduce aeration and turbulence to the flow. So we designed for erosion protection to extend 300 mil below the marsh level on the slopes. And for this, we have avoided the hard engineering traditional gabion baskets, and we've opted instead for root-lock geotextile bags. So these are filled with sand, soil, and seed mix, and then can be used to protect against scour and also increase the aeration as the water flows in between the cells. So onto the planting. So sometimes the most exciting bit. Over 300,000 plants are to be installed at Dearne Reach. So this includes over 36 different species of plants, and they are split into 7 different zones. So the 7 different zones cover from the influent water channels. Zones 2 through to 5 are planted on the marsh floor with emergent marsh plant species. And then we also have specific instructions and species for the semi-wet marginal areas between our marsh level and our freeboard across the embankments, and they are classed as zone 6 and 7. So we do have a strict layout plan to follow, and that shows each individual zone in each individual cell with a bespoke species selection and arrangement. So the planting plan on the right of the screen here shows the different zones all colour coordinated as different colours. But then each of those coloured bands also have a specific design of the type, number and order of the species inside it. So it's very complicated, and I'm obviously not going to list out all the species included, but for the ecologists out there who are interested, species include water starwort, white water lily, curly pondweed, common rush, flowering rush, and great spearwort as well. Please forgive, I'm not attempting all the Latin names for those. I've used the common names. The plants themselves are provided by our subcontract partner, Salix, and they have been looking at semi-automated planting machines over the last few years. So this is a tracked machine with low ground pressure and avoids the needs for operatives to plant out the cells by hand. So obviously this would allow for accurate and consistent planting. It's reduced single-use plastic waste, and the machines are health and safety compliant for the UK water sector as well. Obviously, big benefit it would massively speed up the planting process, as by using these machines, plants can be planted in groups of up to 60, 4 to 5 rows wide per pass, which, as you can imagine, over a site the size of 7 football pitches would greatly reduce programme. Another key point for the planting is that we are planting juvenile plant species. So it's really important that we allow the plants to fully establish in that first growing season before we raise the water level to the full operational level. Our system is designed to maintain water levels at 100 mil in their cells for the first year, and then we'll return to normal operating level, and that's around 200 to 300 mil water level depth once the plants are established. Been reassured the plants are hardy for frost and ice, so we don't anticipate that'll be a risk over winter in the first season. And by maintaining the water levels low, we're also significantly reducing the risk of any algal blooms forming as well. The wetland species selected are hardy and they'll be fine in damp soil. They will be fine to be flooded temporarily, and we just don't want them to be sitting in too deep water for a prolonged period of time whilst they're still in their early growth stage. We anticipate the closest monitoring will be required in that first year, but then once the plants are established, they should be a pretty self-sustaining system. However, we've obviously designed a full O&M, operations and maintenance manual, bespoke to this site, as it's not your usual tertiary treatment plant. So yeah, our O&M manual is bespoke for the wetland, and it covers from year one, where the inspections are weekly, fortnightly to monthly, and then they gradually reduce in frequency to more monthly to annual reviews by year three. Post year three and into the future years, it's mainly 6 months to annual reviews, and then a full system review proposed by year 15. So the O&M contains specific details on vegetation monitoring, on the plant health, replanting requirements, invasive species management, water level management as well, and will also provide guidance of sediment removal, managing those preferential flow pathways that might establish in the cells, and maintaining the embankments as well. All this maintenance is to ensure the wetland remains its optimum functionality, and that'll hopefully extend its overall lifespan. We've also proposed, due to the size of our site, that operatives in the future can actually use drone surveys to complete these inspections instead of walking around all the cells individually, and this will hopefully reduce the time it will add to the operatives' workload. It's not our anticipation that operatives will have to enter the wetland. So due to the scale of our site, we've explored the opportunity to use floating aquatic excavators in the cells for any future maintenance. There's a picture of one of these operating on the slide. So we've specifically designed our slopes on all our embankments to be at 1 in 3, and this will allow these machines to basically track into and out of the cells, and then they can complete any vegetation or sediment management that's deemed necessary after the maintenance checks. This means that the maintenance can be carried out whilst the wetland's operational. We don't need to drain down the wetland, we don't need to dewater it, we don't need to take it offline. And it also reduces the risk of a human contact with stormwater as well. A big question I think wetlands always get is how long will they last? So we're proposing to review the system at year 15, and this will just involve a system capacity check. So how well is it operating, basically? The results of this will depend on the sediment inputs entering the wetlands. So once the wetland bed levels have exceeded the design thresholds, there would need to be a system reset. We're anticipating the first cell in the sequence probably the most likely to be worst affected here. So yeah, once those depths have got past the design threshold, that you'd have to dewater, strip the vegetation, excavate that excess material out, and then replant, and then guidance would then follow from year 1 again. This doesn't necessarily have to be completed in year 15. If the system's performing well and the water depth measurements is still within the design threshold, then there's no reason why the system couldn't be maintained for, say, up to 25 years. And it might also be that only the first few cells need replanting by year 15, and cells 4 to 7 are absolutely fine. So it's just going to be a little bit of trial and error a little bit with how long these systems last, but we're anticipating it'll be at least 15 years. So one thing I wanted to touch on is the storm and final effluent flows. So initially we did design the wetland to receive a combination of both storm and final effluent flows from the sewage treatment works at Clayton West. At the moment, the instruction from the Environment Agency is that the wetlands are only going to be receiving storm flows to treat. The hope is that this may be revisited in the future by the EA, and the wetland will be able to treat up to the full capacity it's designed for. But at the moment, if we're only treating storm flows, we did recognise that there's a risk of the wetland plants drying out if there was a prolonged dry period, particularly over summer, where there are limited storm flows. Obviously, if there was a constant stream of final effluent heading to the wetland, this wouldn't be a problem, but when flows are a little bit more intermittent, we wanted to account for that. So we have adapted the design to include some level sensors in those final cells. And if the wetland sees a significant drop in those levels, it'll trigger final effluent to temporarily top up the wetland as a maintenance flow. So this top up won't be discharged into the River Dearne. It'll purely be to keep the wetland plants alive and well so that as soon as a storm event hits, the wetland will be ready to receive and treat those storm flows and reduce the pollutant load entering the river. I believe this is a challenge at the moment faced across the board with numerous wetland projects, numerous water companies, but the good news is that the solution is accepted to treat storm flows. And yeah, keep your fingers crossed that one day the wetland will be allowed to treat both storm and final effluent together. So this isn't one of MMB's projects, it's one of Yorkshire Water's, and I thought at this point it might be useful just to show you one of the other wetlands that's been constructed by Yorkshire Water. So this is pictures that were taken after construction at Clifton in 2021. So you can just see the emergent plants peeking out through the water level there. And then you can see the pictures that were then taken 18 months later in August 2023 on a site visit. So you can just see the scale of plant establishment that's taken place. Clifton's achieving fantastic results across all measured water quality parameters and is serving as a mostly self-sufficient system. There's been minimal maintenance required in the last 5 years, which is great news. It is a slightly smaller scale than the wetland at Clayton West, but hopefully it gives a good indication of what we might expect our wetland to look like in 2 or 3 years' time, hopefully. So on to our build phase on site. So some of the wins we've had. So firstly, obviously we discussed already, we've optimised that design to reduce the earthworks and all material can be reused on site, which is great. All topsoils are going to be reused as planting medium, and we've got no import of any material to form the embankments. We are using intelligent machinery as well on Dearne, which is very exciting. And this is, basically machineries that are pre-programmed with our model. So essentially, if we programmed into the model to dig to a depth of, say, 100 mil, it should dig to a depth of 100 mil, not 101 or 99. So this reduces human error, it increases safety and efficiency. And yeah, we're really proud to be a pilot project using these machines for constructing a wetland. We also did significant GI on site. So anybody who's familiar with the wider area of Huddersfield, we've got a huge coal mining legacy in the area. So we did significant GI before we started works. And then the coal authority was satisfied we weren't going to be disturbing any previous coal mining activity. We also did a lot of archaeological trenching. So it's maybe a little bit difficult to see on the picture, but essentially all those purple lines within the red boundary area were 2-metre wide individual trenching across the entire site, across our entire compound area, to make sure we weren't disturbing any potential pre-medieval features. And we've also had an archaeologist present on site throughout all the excavation work as well, just in case anything hadn't come up in those trenches. Yeah, good news is so far we have not found anything. We're all good on that front. But I think with the GI and the archaeological trenching, it's just a key point if you are wanting to build a wetland to understand your site early, get those investigation works done early. We're talking large areas, particularly for the larger schemes. That was a key learning. We've also got our road SEM. So I know I've touched on this earlier, but we did want to avoid extensive areas of concrete for the access road and stone. So road SEM technology is what we've used for material stabilisation, and that's meant we've been able to repurpose our existing material on site. And for the compound area, the soil can just be previously returned to land use previously following completion of the works, and they can reverse the process and we can leave that material as we found it, which is really good news. Obviously, we've got 300,000 plants coming to site to be installed. These have all been supplied locally and the bespoke arrangements been produced, breaking down all 7 planting zones. We also had a public right-of-way crossing the site, which I haven't touched on. So yeah, originally our public right-of-way crossed right directly through our wetland site, which is obviously not the most convenient place to have a public right-of-way. However, we have successfully applied for a diversion around the sites. So now it will neighbour the river on one side and the wetlands on another. It's wheelchair friendly. It's a 2 metre wide, clean, free draining footpath. We hope to install information boards along the public right of way in the future, and so the general public can see the wetlands, benefit from the wetlands, and understand what it is that we are doing on site, which I think is really, really nice opportunity. So some pictures so far. These are they're mostly from the back end of last year. So started on site in October, and that top picture there in the left-hand corner shows the site without any work done to it. And then very quickly, obviously, we have our topsoil strip, and you can see the wetland cells forming, particularly in the picture in the middle bottom row here. You can see the first 4 cells quite clearly defined now, which is exciting. Unfortunately, we have suffered with the bad weather in January with the snow. We got quite significant snowfall in Yorkshire and a lot of ice. But the exciting news is that this is all melted now, and the site is mostly dry. And we should anticipate that we can continue construction. Yeah, continue construction in the coming weeks, and hopefully, yeah, by early to midsummer, we'll have a fully formed wetlands that's on site, which is exciting. So yeah, currently the site looks a little bit like this. You can see the access roads are in, going around, and the first 4 cells are developed. But yeah, hopefully within the next 6 months or so, it should look much more like the picture on the right-hand side there. So I really hope you enjoyed this presentation. We are seeing an increase in interest in wetland technologies and nature-based solutions, which is really good news. AMP8 is seeing over 3 billion investment targeted purely for nature-based solutions, which I think is a really promising path for UK water. And yeah, hopefully this has been a good example for you for a large-scale implementation of this technology, designed to improve water quality, increase storm storage resilience, and contribute to achieving the goal of net zero as well. So yeah, thank you very much for your time listening, and yeah, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Olivia. Frantically trying to come off mute and back onto camera. That was really interesting. So thank you very much for that. We've got a lot of questions in the Q&A coming through. But as the chair, I'll take the prerogative to ask one of my own. Slight perk. So what I would like to ask is, if you were to have sort of 3 key messages that everyone attending, watching you'd want them to take away, what would they be?
So I'd say first key message is that wetlands are capable for these larger loads. I think it's great that we see wetlands a lot for the smaller works, our very small rural works where population might be even less than 100. But yeah, I'm hoping that what I've shown today is that it can be suitable for larger sites, larger treatment works, and this system can work. I think secondly, early engagement with planning teams is essential. So hopefully with the GI work and the archaeology work that we've discussed, if you are doing a larger wetland, this does take land, often land near a river. So it is really good to make sure you know your groundwater, you know if there's coal mining, you know if there's archaeology, yeah, really understanding your site early on before it gets to detailed design is great to make sure that you can hit those program dates and get the necessary planning. So that would be my second takeaway. And then thirdly, hopefully just what we'd outlined around the operations and maintenance. So there's no reason why a lot of the wins that we've had at Dearne Reach and yeah, cannot be replicated across numerous wetlands. So your floating excavators for your maintenance, proposing drone surveys, planting machines instead of hand planting. These are all technologies and solutions that can be used on multiple wetland sites. It's not just bespoke to ours. And yeah, hopefully that would then speed up the programme and increase efficiencies across the board as well. Yeah, they'd be my three main takeaways.
So yeah, we've got a lot of questions, got 25 so far. So I think I'll start with one that I think has been answered and is a quick one. So that is, how will maintenance be carried out? Can plant go into the cells, or is it all assumed to be manual?
Yes, so plant can go into cells. So yeah, we've um found the idea of floating excavators quite early on in the project, which was really great news. And we discussed with some of the suppliers of these that the slopes needed to be 1 in 3 in order to make sure that they could safely track in and out of the cells. So we adapted the design to make sure our embankments were 1 in 3. And yeah, they can operate in up to 1,200 millimeters depth of water. So much deeper than what we're talking. We're talking like 300 mil normal water level. So um, they're designed to not damage the plant, not damage the embankments, and then they can go in whilst the cell's still live and operational, clear out that sediment if that's what they need to do, or trim down the vegetation, and then track back out. So yeah.
Fantastic. I've got a bit of a double header. So looking at the different size width of the wetland cells, how have you designed to manage the velocity of the hydraulic throughput to prevent long-term scouring and erosion and ultimately bypassing of cells? With an add-on of, did you consider additional deep zones, i.e. e.g. in the middle of the cells, to further reduce hydrological short circuiting?
Okay, right. Big question. So yeah, I'll do my best to answer, but let me know if I haven't touched any all the points. So just on the deep zones, yes, that's a good point. We did. So you can kind of actually see it in this image here. With it's only a visualization, but we have open water channels at the beginning and end of all the wetland cells. These won't be planted and they will provide the deep zones. So as the water passes across the cascade structure, through the open water channel, there's your deep zones, and that they're important for the treatment capacity, introduce aeration, I believe. Remind me of the beginning part of the question about the hydraulics and how it's worked to make sure there's no erosion. Was that the
Yeah,
question?
how
Yeah.
have you managed the velocity of the hydraulic throughput to prevent scouring and erosion?
Yeah.
Passing.
So we have looked into that. So originally we were assuming when the water comes in at cell 1, we have a distribution chamber and that equally splits the flows into pathways A and pathways B. And we did originally propose that we were going to need a lot of erosion protection and stone there to protect against scouring when the water's coming in. But we assessed with the hydraulics and we did the checks, and actually the erosion risk really wasn't as high as we were anticipating because the pipe's entering into the open water channel. We may need to put small erosion protection around that pipe protrusion, but it definitely won't need to be across the entire channel. So yeah, we're not anticipating any real risk with erosion. At the cascades, obviously that's where the water's then being channeled into the one cascade structure to go to the next cell. We have put erosion protection on the edges of the cascades as it extends into the marsh level. So we're using the root lock geogrow bags for that. They're filled with sand, soil, seed mix. I think they potentially can establish vegetation. I think if they're permanently submerged in our situation, they may not. But yeah, they will protect the edges of the cascade against erosion and also introduce that aeration and turbulence flow as well as the water runs across them. Hopefully that answers the question.
Fantastic, yeah. So quick question from the questions have just moved. Question from Sarah Shearer. The wetland will undoubtedly improve water quality on site from the overflow discharges. However, a few questions come to mind. Firstly, what is the screening like before getting to wetland, as often screening is insufficient and allows sewage-related debris to discharge, e.g. wipes, sanitary towels, etc. Will this potentially enter the wetlands?
Hopefully not, no. So we are intercepting the storm flows after they've been in the storm tanks. So we are instead of the flows going to their normal outfall, which they're currently doing, we're intercepting them at that point and then bringing them up into the wetlands. So they should have already been screened. We shouldn't be seeing. We should have some. We'll probably have some light sedimentation, especially in those early cells. Like I said, they'll probably need to be taken offline the first. Often what we see in these systems is the first cell is the one that builds up the most sediment, and probably needs to have the most maintenance. But no, hopefully we shouldn't be seeing too much debris and rags. That should have all been screened out earlier.
I think then this is a follow-up question. Often the problems at existing sewage treatment works is lack of maintenance. Is this a potential sticking plaster? How can you ensure that the works are operating in a way that prevent unnecessary overflows going to the wetland, such as throttling flows, etc.?
So the maintenance one first. You're absolutely right with maintenance. I think there's also maybe a perception sometimes with nature-based solutions that these are completely self-sufficient and they don't need any maintenance and you can just build them and leave them. And obviously that is definitely not what we're proposing here. We have got a full O&M manual to follow, and that breaks down those activities in the first year, where maintenance is maybe a little bit more onerous. It does slow down as the system gets more developed and more self-sustaining, but it's really important that we do those sediment management checks, those vegetation management checks, that we don't let invasive species take over, for example, or if there are preferential flow pathways, that we solve that and we make sure it's functioning to its full capacity. So these are definitely not maintenance-free systems by any means, but they're more checking systems rather than having to completely replace or require any chemicals or high carbon costs in the maintenance. So you've got that win. In terms of the flows, I understand the questions to be like, how do we make sure that we're not spilling? Is that the question?
I think it's about preventing unnecessary flows. So it
Okay.
is properly getting storm flows rather than dry flows, is
Yes.
what I'm reading.
Yes. So we're taking 200 litres per second of up to 200 litres per second of storm flows. Obviously, it depends how much storm flows are entering the works. But that is pretty much the majority of all the storm flows reaching Clayton West. I think the maximum storm flows we've ever seen is like 213 litres per second. So we're pretty much taking all the storm flows when they come into the works, and they'll be going to the wetland. The caveat to that is obviously if we aren't getting any storm flows for a prolonged period of time, we don't anticipate this is going to happen very often, probably maybe once a year. But if we do have a particularly dry summer and the wetland plants start to dry out and the levels start to significantly drop, then we will top up with a maintenance flow. And this maintenance flow will be final effluent, and it'll just be topped up just enough to fill the wetlands with a little bit of water, keep the wetlands plants wet, but it won't be enough to start overtopping and spilling into the River Dearne. It will just hold the water, evaporate back down again. Obviously, we'd be talking in the summer mostly, with a lot of heat. So yeah, no, we're taking pretty much in most scenarios, taking all the storm flows through the wetland and then just topping up with FE.
Fantastic. I'll try and get you a few quick ones because I'm just conscious of time. Is there a use for the sediment? I'm assuming this is the sediment that you extract from the wetland cells, or will it need to be treated as waste or something?
Good question. I'm not entirely sure. I think again, yeah, it will probably have to be treated as waste. I think that it's probably a good research point into what can be done with these sediments. Obviously, we're only talking, hopefully, that significant sediment management will be needed as we head into, year 10, year 15, year 20. But yeah, not entirely sure on the answer to that one as to what will happen to it. Hopefully there won't be a huge amount of it. And on the scale we're talking, hopefully the problem will be more concentrated in that first cell. So cells 1A, 1B, potentially cell 2. But hopefully as we head into the cells 3 to 7, that sediment management will be very, very minimal. Fingers crossed.
Another quick one, and then there's a couple of bigger ones coming up after that. How has this been permitted? Is it classed as a waste activity?
So in terms of permitting, that's a lot of Yorkshire Water's scope of works. So I'm happy to take that question offline as well, and I can check in with Yorkshire Water. But yeah, my understanding is they've been permitting. They've got a new discharge permit at the new outfall that we're constructing. It's been accepted by the Environment Agency to accept the storm flows. Yeah, it's not my scope of work in terms of the permit. It is a Yorkshire Water asset, and they've been in charge of their permits. So I'm more than happy. I think my email's been on this presentation. Drop us a line, and I can get that a full answer for you from Yorkshire Water.
Fantastic, thank you. So this is one of the longer ones. What are the monitoring and evaluation mechanisms, including quantification of wastewater effluent quality?
So we do have a flow monitoring chamber. So in terms of the flow itself, that's powered by solar panel, and that solar panel energy, and that's at the outlet of the works. We've also got one to see what's coming in and what's coming out. We are also going to be taking manual samples at the outfall. So yeah, again, the Yorkshire Water into whatever they've agreed with the permit to what they're sampling. I know at Clifton they've been sampling almost every single water quality parameter that they think they can to get that data. I think it's important for a lot of wetland projects at the moment that we're quite early on with some of the first ones that are being deployed. So data is really important, capturing that data, capturing the performance, and then hopefully, that can help with future projects and getting more of these wetlands agreed and over the line.
I think this might be partial. I think, are there any specific parameters the wetland is required to meet other than the max flow, such as BOD, nutrients, etc.?
Yes, it's ammonia. So ammonia is the main driver for this works. Obviously, we're hoping that we will see improvements in BOD and in phosphorus and in suspended solids. It should hopefully cover all the water quality parameters, but it is the unionized ammonia levels that this works is targeting, and that's to be reduced in line with their fundamental salmonid intermittent standards, is where the drivers come from. So yeah, that's hopefully that answers that one.
Thank you. Hopefully this is a quick one. Will the sewage work still be putting treated effluent straight into the river?
The final effluent, yes, currently. We were hoping that we would be able to divert most of the final effluent alongside storm flows into the wetland. At the moment, only the storm flows have been agreed with the Environment Agency. So final effluent is just going to be as normal and go through its existing outfall. The system is designed to take both storm and final effluent though, the capacity. So yeah, I know Yorkshire Water are in discussions at the moment with the Environment Agency, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to use this wetland to treat both. But I think there's just issues at the moment with combining storm and final effluent, and then how that's permitted and tracked with the Environment Agency. I believe that's the discussions that are going on. So yeah, at the moment, unfortunately, we're only taking storm flows, but we have the capacity to take both in the future.
Fantastic. Hopefully some quick ones. How is the project being funded? Solo Yorkshire Water or Ofwat Innovation Fund, etc.?
Oh, good point. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I don't know. I believe it. Yeah, it's Yorkshire Water, obviously, is the funding, but where they've got the funding from, I'm not sure. Again, drop us a line after this. I will find out the funding models. I just don't know them. Sorry.
Are the cells individual or seen as one structure? If seen as one structure, could this come under the Reservoir Act?
Good point. So originally, actually, yes, we thought it was. So I believe memories serves me right. It was 10,000 meters cubed storage, and it would have been treated, even though they are individual cells, it would have been treated as one structure for the Reservoir Act. But then when we optimized the design, we reduced the total free board, the fall between the consecutive cells. We recalculated the total storage across all 13 of the cells, and it was underneath that threshold. So then we had it agreed that we actually didn't fall under the Reservoir Act anymore. So yeah, no, it was an interesting point actually, as to they are individual cells, but they were going to be treated as one whole structure. But we are under that threshold, which was good news. But yeah, it's a good point.
What is the cost of Bentafix GCL?
Oh, the liner. Again, let me take that one away and find out fully. I don't want to start quoting figures and it be completely wrong. I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm trying to go by a most upvotes, so let me just refresh that to see what's at the top. Has any river monitoring been carried out before this system is brought online in order to understand the post-implementation on the receiving environment?
Yeah, I assume so. Obviously, since the driver is to reduce those levels of ammonia in line with the standards, we obviously have the starting, if we want to call them starting, current situation, and then yeah, we'll be sampling to see the improvements. Yeah, once it's commissioned and fully operational.
Fantastic, and I think we've probably got time for one more question. Quick one. What are the liners that were used at Clifton? Do we know?
So Clifton wasn't one of M&B's, so I'm not entirely sure. My understanding is I'm not sure there was a liner. Might be wrong on that. It wasn't my project. But yeah, we didn't have any lessons learned about the liner at Clifton, so I imagine maybe their soils had existing permeability that they didn't need one. So obviously that was the hope for us as well. We thought we'll test the soil. Hopefully it'll come back saying it's really impermeable and we'd be able to reuse the soil itself. We wouldn't need a liner at all. And that wasn't the case with our site. So obviously it's important that we had that impermeable barrier. If memory serves me right, I think Clifton could just reuse the material they had on site to create their own liner. I don't think they had one. But I will have to go away afterwards and just double check that. Yeah, like I say, my understanding is I think if they'd had a liner, we'd probably have used lessons learned from it. So I think they reused their own material.
Fantastic. Well, we've got 3 minutes left. So
To the next slides. A couple more slides for SIREM events, I think.
Oh yes, there we are. So yeah, these are the SIREM events that are upcoming. Again, as we said, these will be available on the website. Early bird tickets this week for Flood and Coast. We've got the River and Coastal Group Anniversary Technical Conference, several presidential team events. So the current SIREM president's got several events coming up. So please do take a look at them. Some of them are really interesting. Not just not the usual sort of technical presentations, some slightly more abstract stuff. So really good to see. Finally, just to say thank you to Olivia. We've had several of the questions start with great presentation. Thank you very much. And just complimenting, and we've had 16 people uptick the comment from Alistair just saying really good presentation. Many thanks for the trouble you've gone to in putting it together. So yeah, echo that thanks on the behalf of the Tyne Humber committee. And yeah, really great presentation, and we'll hopefully get some more and see how this progresses.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much all, and we'll close that there.